glad that everyone is here. Just for those that may be new, if we have any new faces, Texas Values is a statewide organization that works on religious liberty, marriage, and pro-life issues across the state. And I just wanted to briefly share with y'all some information about how to effectively engage with your legislatures. Most of the folks that are here, I think, are pretty in tune with that. We've been talking about it for several weeks. I'll plug again our Texas Legislative Guide, which is a great kind of introductory resource for folks with all the contact information of your legislators, both here in Austin and from Texas in Congress, and a lot of good information here. Great resource to share, take back home, share with your church, your Tea Party group, any other organization. It's a really good first entry point. I'm just going to focus on kind of given where we are as we're getting kind of later in the legislative session. We're obviously in the point where we're having a lot of committee hearings. I'm going to be talking about a couple bills, an important bill that we have a committee hearing on tomorrow. In these committee hearings now, we're kind of getting to the point where we've got to get those moving and moving quickly. As was kind of alluded to before, and unfortunately, we haven't seen a whole lot of our priorities make it out of committee. So I would really encourage folks to become, if you're not already, abundantly familiar with the members of this House and the Senate State Affairs Committees, because a lot of pretty much all the bills that organizations like ours and a lot of the pro-life bills are in those committees. I would encourage you to be in contact with those committees, with those chairs about some of the bills that are going to be talked about here. Encourage your, as you, I'm sure, come here and people back home look to y'all as sources of information because you're here in Austin. Be a resource to them and kind of be a voice to folks to let them know that these committees are kind of hold the gates on what moves forward and what doesn't, and encourage folks to be in contact. Obviously, if folks can't make it to Austin, phone calls to the committee are very important, and obviously continue to contact your legislator on an important bill. We have been doing a lot of as a way to try to help build momentum on bills. Is a lot of times we will ask our folks to contact their members specifically and ask them to co-author a bill, which is kind of a sign of broad support. And we have a number of bills that have quite a few co-authors, indicating that there is broad support in the House for some of these measures. And so would encourage folks to continue to do that because that is a good way to make some momentum and move forward. Let me just kind of segue into some of the bills particularly that we're talking about, and I think that will help continue to illustrate some effective ways to be communicating. We have mentioned throughout this process one of our priorities has been HB 3567, which is a bill by Representative Scott Sanford. It is what we're calling a pastor protection bill. And this is the bill that is in House State Affairs tomorrow. We anticipate it will be in the committee once they get off the floor, hopefully sometime earlier in the afternoon as opposed to later in the afternoon. But we'll see on that. But the bill essentially says that pastors, church leaders, faith-based church organizations and so forth, the government can't force them to participate in or perform a marriage, same-sex marriage that violates their sincerely held religious beliefs. And we have actually seen a number of other states that have been working on this issue. We have been a part of a number of pastor statewide conference calls, and this is a legitimate concern that a lot of our pastors and church leaders have across the state. With everything that's going on the marriage issue, with the Supreme Court set to have oral arguments, with the potential to redefine marriage across the country. At the end of April is when they have oral arguments and a decision a little bit later. This is a legitimate concern. And I know what the argument is going to be. The argument is going to be, oh, we're fear-mongering, this would never happen in this country. Let me just say that if you look back 2 years ago over where we were on the marriage issue, my organization, our organization, others. And could you legitimately say you think we'd be where we are today, and really in the past year, that we would have 30 some odd rogue federal judges striking down marriage laws all across the state, that we would have a decision at the Supreme Court potentially that could wipe out the marriage laws in a majority of the states? We have come so far so fast, and I do not think for a second that the folks that are pushing to redefine marriage are going to be happy with anything, because we know they're always pushing the agenda. So we have a number of legitimate concerns that if the Supreme Court invents out of thin air a constitutional right to homosexual marriage, that they are going to be starting the drumbeat of saying your church facility, if it's open to the public, it's a place of public accommodation, and therefore you need to be available to any kind of marriage that the state recognizes. And unfortunately, what that may cause is a number of churches to just continue to draw back. And again, I would submit to folks that what we don't need right now is the church to continue to draw back and hunker down in its own little corner. So this is an important bill. We're anticipating a lot of pastors from across the state making it down tomorrow. I know we're going to be sending out an email update. There's going to be a gathering point for pastors coming in on this issue tomorrow. We'll be sending that out in our email update. I would encourage folks, make a phone call to your church today, your pastor. Just make sure that they're aware that this issue is going on. And even if obviously they can't make it down here, that they could contact I can't tell you the difference that it can make to have a pastor, a local pastor from a member's district, to reach out to their representative, to call the State Affairs Committee. We can make a difference, and we can get this bill done. So again, that's 3567. And
David, real quick, where's the gathering place tomorrow?
well, I've heard two different answers, so I want to confirm that. I think there's going to be some folks gathering on the north steps at 1 o'clock, but I also think that there might be a room somewhere in the
I
Capitol.
heard that there's a room next to the meeting, but in the Reagan building.
Yeah, I mean, the Senate State Affairs meetings, the room will be 140 in the Reagan building.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get all that confirmed, and we'll be sending out, and I'm sure we'll be posting it on our social media and so forth.
One other thing
later today.
about, there's no companion bill for that. So what happens if there's not a companion bill?
Then, as what was kind of discussed before, the bill would have to go over, and the Senate would have to take up.
Somebody would adopt it.
Yeah, would have to take up the House passed version, and which is why, pretty much every bill that we've had a committee hearing on up to this point, you've heard us say, well, we had this committee hearing and it was left pending. We cannot have bills. We can't have this bill left pending for a significant period of time. That's just not.
Do you have anyone that may adopt it?
It's not the best question for me, but I could probably find out and talk to you about that.
I will say, David, that my pastor sent me an alert last night that came out of the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. And that is an affiliation, you probably know, of about 1,100 Baptist churches in Texas that are very conservative. So they put out in their legislative alert to support or ask for support for Scott Sanford's bill on pastors. So that is one group of churches in Texas that is
and there's
aware of it.
been a number. And so let me just mention quickly two other bills. We love Scott Sanford. He has another great bill. For those that don't know, Representative Sanford, he actually is a pastor himself from the church in McKinney. He has another bill that we had a hearing on last week, which is 3864. They've given it they're calling it the Home Bill, the Hope for Orphans and Minor Expansion Act. What this bill essentially does is protect the religious freedom and conscience rights of child welfare workers, specifically adoption agencies, foster homes. And this is a very important issue too, again, related to the marriage issue. We've already seen in other states that have redefined marriage, pressure, essentially forcing some Catholic charities, other adoption agencies, essentially to have to close down because the state has said to them, you can't operate under your religious beliefs, which most of these organizations want to place children in mother and father married households. And so and this is going to be it's a very interesting hearing if anyone was watching. There was Representative Brian Hughes was questioning at the end Kathy Adams, the president of Texas Freedom Network, and he essentially put her on the spot.
Wait, excuse me.
Kathy Miller.
Kathy, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Excuse
Boy,
me.
yes, I understand. You could have stood up and yelled at me for that one. I apologize. Kathy, I apologize. Kathy Miller. And essentially put her on the spot. You know, do you think in Texas that, you know, faith-based Christian adoption agencies and so forth should be able to operate according to their religious beliefs in how they go about providing a tremendous service to this state? And she kind of him-hawed around, but the essential answer was no, because if they're going to quote-unquote discriminate, which they believe, they make the argument that upholding the biblical view of marriage is somehow discrimination. That, you know, ultimately they probably shouldn't, or they at least certainly shouldn't be able to get any state funding for those kinds of things. So very telling debate, and I think that's going to be an important bill to follow. And then also, we sent out an action alert last week, an update on the state sovereignty and marriage protection act, Cecil Bell's Bill 4105, and someone else can talk about that a little bit more. That is still sitting pending in House State Affairs, so we're still following that bill, but we also alerted people to, there is a companion version of that bill in the Senate that Senator Perry has, 673, and we're encouraging folks to contact the Senate State Affairs and the Senate in general, because we haven't had a hearing on any of our related bills on these issues in the Senate, not one. And so that's very troubling to us. And so we're asking folks to specifically reach out related to Senator Perry's companion bill, SB 673. And again, that bill is the one that makes it very clear in state law that no funding will go to and no recognition will be given to marriage licenses that are given out that are in clear violation of our state constitution and laws. So I think that's all that I have, unless there are any more questions. I think Nicole, with our staff, she handed out a handout that has kind of our action alert on Scott Sanford's two bills that has some more information on there. So.
Hey, David. Next up, Nancy, you looked up to me. Ann Hanger, Conservatives for America.